Hello everyone, hopefully you are doing well. We're going to be doing a raw look at all of the data mines of the last set of dev servers. There was technically 3/4 dev servers if you want to go through with it, and I've got to say this is one of the largest updates that they've done in a long time for War Thunder itself. So this video is going to be long. It's going to be going through everything that's available, and also I'm doing it basically live on Twitch. Means that people can, put comments in and stuff, so you can have a look at that stuff too. So if you are ever interested in that stuff or being in videos, it's something to at least get involved in. So once again, thank you to Ashida for doing these and setting them up. Always a fantastic fact that we actually have these resources in the community. Unsung heroes, I think people like Ashida and Zabi are when we look at all of this stuff. Now it's time to go through them. We'll start off from this one, which was from 3 weeks ago, which was when the first dev server came out, which is just completely crazy to actually think about how far back everything has gone. But hopefully we'll see the updates soon, and it won't be too much of an issue. The damage model parameters, there were new parameters which were added, basically mainly down to naval stuff. These all, they changed once again a lot of the ways that naval vehicles, especially higher echelon ones, take damage. So that's basically what these ones are talking about. There's also new impact patches. So these are from the angle penetration things. This is, they actually talked about it in a dev blog where you can actually see now kind of like the cross from the APF SDS going through, which is pretty nice. And then also they changed some parameters for the broken elevator stuff, as you can see for the naval things. The caliber to distance in water table has also changed, so what you can actually see from that setup. And also they changed a ton of repair times for a bunch of vehicles. So a lot of vehicles got them lowered, a lot of them got them increased. You know how we talk about soft balancing overall? So a lot of people bring up repair costs, a lot of people bring up reload speeds, and those two things are ways of balancing vehicles. But there's a ton of other ones as well, and one of them is max repair times. So the amount of time it takes you to repair specific parts of your vehicle is going to make it as effective, right? So the shorter it takes to repair stuff, the more time you're able to do stuff, whereas the longer it takes, the more time it's going to take, right? So it's a soft balancing mechanic, especially in naval, when you can be repairing constantly and, trying to get turrets back up, you're trying to put out fires and all of that. So a lot of vehicles got that changed, and you can see it's mainly for the funnels, engine rooms, the caliber turrets, and the auxiliaries. The actual big one is the main caliber turrets going from 5.8 to 10 seconds for all of these vehicles. All the rest, not a huge change, if we're honest. It's not massive, but it is something to at least think about. But the turrets are the huge one. Then for fire parameters, you once again have a bunch of changes to that, and pretty much making it a little bit easier to put out fires in most setups. The underwater extinguish time, though, is a little bit longer for destroyers, but they are making it so the extinguish chance is 100% on certain parts and higher on others. So it'll be much easier without FPE to survive. I still think they should make FPE in parts lower for a lot of vehicles. I think that's generally a better thing to go for, and all of that stuff. We also have FX changes, which turn around. FX changes just mean what you kind of see and what's going around the place. You also have a bunch of new game parameters as well. So the separate CCIP indication is false. Guided bomb CCIP is true. So you now have guided CCIP for bombs, by the way. Like, that's how it's all set up. So like it wasn't there before, but now you can. So that's another mechanic they've added, which is pretty cool, right? Kind of annoying it wasn't in earlier, because we've had guided bombs for a long time. We've also had CCRP for a long time, but they're finally marrying those two ideas together. Then you also have these, which are all set up as well. And then once again, repairs, they're changing the radius for assists and requests. So putting them and formalizing them. Same with extinguishers and arcade boosts, radars. They're also changing a little bit. And then one of the other balancing things they're doing, especially for arcade, is they are changing some of the kill streaks for vehicles, so making them a little bit more powerful or a little bit less powerful depending on what's going on. And the shell icons, they also changed a lot too, so they'll look a little bit more pronounced, which is nice. And also they massively changed the explosive mass for overpressure damage, and basically meaning that you can see here, the actual explosive mass to overpressure damage, it basically means that the more you have, the higher it's going to be now. So overpressure damage is getting a huge boost compared to what it had before, which kind of sucks. I wish that wasn't the case, but it is how it is. There's also new explosive type, the TG20, and also the IRCM, which is for the SU-25T and SU-39. And the track friction they changed, but remember, they've already reverted all those changes they did to them. So they also added a ton of new crew sounds, which we covered. I did several videos on that. There's even a full playlist for it too. And then also, explosive mass to open top pressure data table was changed as well. So whether this is actually changing the amounts or just updating the amounts to where they should be, we'll have to see what that actually is. There's also new DU APDS slope modifiers, so 25mm, the GAUs and also the 30s. So that's something they also changed, and we'll have to see how that affects especially air vehicles, or ground vehicles, sorry. They also added all the new aircraft. We covered all of them, so I'm going to actually skip over most of the vehicle stuff in that way because, well, we've done videos about all of them, so you can just kind of check them there. And then they also changed a bunch of flight models. So the lags got changed, the TBD, and also the Farman, Levechkins, and also Does, but all they did was update them to the new FM format, since a lot of these are pretty old vehicles. The F4J lost its combat flaps, which is a pretty big deal actually, and also they changed how the wings worked with it. The F4S as well, the drag load on the wings and the fuselage aerodynamics changed, so it should actually fly a little bit better. And then they also changed the F-16s quite aggressively. So max G load increasing in the negative direction by about 1.08, 0.58 depending on fuel, and then also 0.81 to 0.44. So they'll definitely handle a little bit differently in the air, which will kind of suck for them. Also, the Hunter, the fuel accumulator flow rate is going from 1.5 to 5.5. So watch out for when you're moving around your Hunters or anything like that, because you might just your fuel might just disappear. Then you got the JAB, the J35. They also changed. That's a huge change for the J35, making it a lot more useful at higher speeds. So that'll help the J35A and specifically the D, since that one's at a BR where you kind of get some crazy missiles there. The J37's drop tank's no longer self-sealing. Not exactly really going to do anything. The Key 87, the cockpit door opening was slower the faster the aircraft was, while closing was faster than the aircraft was. This has been swapped. Well, isn't that how like all cockpits work in the game? Or maybe they swapped them around. They also changed the Mirage 2000s, so they basically affected their engines and how they work, so you can check out the stuff there. And also the P39, the RPM at 0% throttle is no longer its max RPM. Instead, it's 450. Basically, at 0% throttle, the vehicle, you would just constantly hear, because it was just like still going at a crazy amount, but yeah, kind of funny. The Protest 631, you got manual EFS now, which makes more sense. And the Pyramidsky and the Reggiani 2005 now have unlimited WEP, which is a huge positive to them. They changed the F3 and the GR Mark 1 in the IDS, all basically changing them the same, since pretty much their general shape is exactly the same. The internals are slightly different. And then the Voto 2N, the fuel tank number 7 is considered external, so there you go. Bye-bye fuel tank. They changed the best helicopter in the game, the AB205A1, and not huge changes, but you know how it is. And same with the H6M. They actually increased its engine power, but also increased its full mass. So, more power, but also heavier. We'll have to see how that affects the vehicle. There's some now unused loadouts on some of the new vehicles as well, so they'll probably get these at launch if they do come out. You have the AGS-37, which can bring 2 30s or 4 RBO-5As, plus some flares and chaff and 120s. It would be very surprising if it doesn't get these, because of the simple fact that it's not exactly game breaking or anything like that, and they can bring similar loadouts with other parts as well, right? And then you also have the BF2C1, the 500-pound bomb, which is quite nice. I don't know, once again, why they haven't given it that. Like, for me, that sounds pretty good. I would probably go for that over what it already has. The F-14B has a loadout of 6 AIM-7Fs and 4 Mark 84 AARs. So, and the Mirage 2005F, 2 Magic 1s, which you would never use anyway because it gets Magic 2s. The KH-23Ms and the R-73s, so the Su-25T. Alright, well, that's going to be their response to if the vehicle doesn't do very well, right? They're just going to give it the crazy missiles. Same with the Su-39, actually. With the Mercury targeting pod, the cabs, and the 60Ms will be quite nice as well. So then, for the A1H, you have new loadouts for it. So Mark 81s and 82s. We had a look at this. There's a ton, right? So pretty much anything around here is all just going to be like the Snake Eye stuff, right? They did remove some loadouts from the A4B, but once again, that's just because they added the secondary armaments. But pretty much a ton of vehicles that we've already covered had the Snake Eyes, set up and gone, right? And then also you can see here for all these vehicles, hitting the fuselage with high amounts of damage can now cause aileron control loss. So the simple fact is, we're literally on part 1 of the Datamine, right? And it just shows how many changes they're doing. Like, this is an insanely large update, which is probably why it's taking, a long time for it to come out. So then we have, more Snake Eye stuff just getting added to a bunch of things. The A5C now has a 250 set of kilo loadouts, which is quite nice. But they also change, how it all works for those loadouts. And then the A6E, they actually added a gyro sight, which is pretty cool to it. And once again, a bunch of Snake Eyes and things like that. So same with the A7D as well. It's got itself the gyro one. And also this one, the AOA indexer gauges in the cockpit, which might be useful going forward. Same with the A7E, of course, same stuff. Once again, more Snake Eyes. Same with the A7K, not a surprise. And then the A10 also gets the gyro sight. Its engine armor has been increased. And also they've increased its spars. So a lot of people saying, that the A10 it should be more tanky. It's getting more tanky over time, right? Like, slowly but surely it's, going through. So then you have, of course, the explosion and leak chances lowered, fire chances increased. You do have EFS, that's good. No matter the damage, the tail can no longer be broken off. So they've literally improved it in that way. They've also hitting the fuselage with high amounts of damage can now cause aileron control loss. So yeah, they're buffing the survivability of the A10, basically. Now on to part 2. So the A21 is getting a gyro sight and has lost a bunch of its loadouts though, which kind of sucks. And then once again, all of these vehicles here, they added the gyro sight, hitting the engine with high amount of damage now has a high chance causing fire, and hitting the fuselage with high amount of damage can now cause aileron control loss. So once again, they are massively changing how DMs work for aircraft. So everything you hear about before this update, when it comes to, damage model issues or anything like that, we have another update here, which is just fundamentally changing how all of these things work, which is just a pain. You know, it's so hard to keep track of all of these different things, right? So then you have the A26, the B18, and the Chesapeake Mark 1. I don't even know what that is. The PBM1 and the SB2U. The loadouts now drop separately, the 100s and the 250s, so they become a little bit more useful. Then these get the same change as the other ones as well, which are set up too. And then all of these drop the 250s separately, so now you'll be able to just do way more damage, which goes through it, which is quite nice. And then all of these DM changes to all of these vehicles. Same with like the Sea Fury, it gets another gyro sight. So many things again in the gyro sight, which is kind of cool. And then also the B7 and the D3. These guys can be dropped separately too. And a bunch of bombs are just getting dropped separately. It's going to get to a point where pretty much everything can be dropped separately, which is where we're nearly at. The BE6 lost some loadouts, but that's because it added custom loadouts, which isn't too much of a surprise. And then also, they fixed the fact that the gun pods on the G series of BF-109s were invisible. I don't know what's going on with the gun pods, but I feel like they've broken them millions of times, over and over and over again. But yeah, as simple as. When they add custom loadouts to vehicles, by the way, they remove loadouts because technically you can build the custom loadouts from those removed loadouts. So that's why they're disappearing, right? So this doesn't mean that this vehicle is losing these abilities. It just means that you have to create a custom setup which will have all of these in it, right? And they're adding custom loadouts to a ton of vehicles, not just high tier ones, as you can see, a lot of low tier ones as well. And the idea is eventually everything will get custom loadouts, which is pretty cool. Some more gyro sights, and then once again, some more changes. They actually changed the C-47. I don't know how many people knew the C-47A was in the game, but it's in one of the single player missions, weirdly enough. So yeah, it's about, and it's kicking. So C-47A has its engine sound changed. And also the CR-32 you can now spawn twice, which it should have been because it's a reserve. And yeah, more custom loadouts for the Demon. And then also changing the F4C, mainly because of the good old snake eyes that they added in, though, to everything. And more gyro sights for pretty much everything. They also changed the HUD, actually, the EJ Kai, so that actually might make a decent amount of difference, especially to sim players. And they also increased the Mach limit drop for all of the Phantoms on top of all of the other DM changes they did, and of course adding the snake eyes, which they did to pretty much every Phantom, apart from, I believe, the F4EJ Kai, or did they even... Oh no, sorry, they also have the snake eyes, so yeah, that's something to look at. There's actually new loadouts for the F4S as well, AIM-9Hs, AIM-7Fs, and snake eyes, so just basically changing the Mark 82s to the drag chutes. And then also, you have the same DM changes being applied to all of these vehicles as well, which seems to be this main one here, which we've seen like 50 times now, which is hitting the fuselage with high amounts of damage can now cause aileron control loss. So right now, if you hit the fuselage on a vehicle, it doesn't really do anything. Like if you crit a fuselage, it doesn't do a lot apart from slow the vehicle down, reducing its max speed. Which is why when you get what we know as like ghost crits, where you crit something on the vehicle but it doesn't really hamper its ability, that's one of those crits. So when you hit the fuselage, what generally happens is it actually kills the speed of a vehicle, so it actually gets a really good turn onto you, and then you can die straight up afterwards, which is very annoying. Nowadays, or after next update, I should say, that's going to change. So hitting the fuselage is actually going to do critical damage to the ailerons, which is actually something I don't think we've ever had apart from full control loss, so pretty cool. The Tiger Cat got custom loadouts too, which is cool, and the Crusader got snake eyes. They also added a new loadout to the F9, F2, and F5, 8 250 pounder stock, which is going to help it because those vehicles, the Panthers, are in such a bad state right now. Like, I don't know what you do to them, what you do with them, sorry. The Tiger, I think it's called, the F11 F1, got custom loadouts too, so the event vehicle from back in the day. It's still at 9.0. I'm amazed that thing's at 9.0, by the way. It's an insanely good vehicle. Then we have the gyro sight for the F14 once again. Some new loadouts, which are just the drag stuff. And then same with the F16. So you have these two, by the way. Like, these two are getting added to pretty much every air vehicle in the game. So just memorize these two and just like apply them to everything. The F-16, F-16A10 and AJ, they now actually have the Japanese pilot model instead of the Italian one, which is quite funny. For some reason, a bunch of Italians just nicked some Japanese planes. And then for the F-84F, they actually added the CCIP for the cannons, which is pretty cool. So that'll be a little bit more useful, I suppose, in ground, but not really. You know, you're still very heavily reliant on the bombs. Custom loadouts for the Wyvern and the F-100, which is nice. And then also for the F-100D, of course. The interesting thing about one of the F-100s, it doesn't say it here, because it might have been in a later Datamine, but the F-100A for China is actually getting AIM-9Es, which is a huge addition for it, making it so much more useful compared to previously. They're also changing a few multipliers here and there, but nothing huge on the vehicles, and gyro sights to everything as well. So moving on to part 3, we're still on aviation because that's the main thrust of this update, if you haven't worked out yet. Aviation is huge for this one. They added the ejection seat to the FJ4B, same with the VMF, the event one, which was the first vehicle in the game to get AGMs, by the way. Good old bullpups. They were so broken because the camera actually followed the missile, so you could literally be sat on your airfield, fire a missile, and then hit a person on the cap, which was cool. Then you got custom loadouts. They added some Zunis as well, which is pretty nice. And then the Focke-Wulf 190s, they're changing a bunch of them as well. So some armor on them, so changing slight survivability, and once again the aileron loss we talked about before. So that's coming for a bunch of things. The G91s get custom loadouts, which is cool. Same with all of them. So they removed all of these loadouts, even the unused ones, which, you know, kind of makes sense. So the R3, by the way, for the longest time, had a 4 AIM-9B unused loadout and still hasn't been used, so kind of sad. But they're adding custom loadouts, which is why they're removing all of these, so you can kind of mix and match. Same with the R4 as well, and also they changed some more bombs to be dropped separately for the H8Ks. The Harrier GR7 Mark 7 also has a new loadout now, which is once again the drag bombs, and they changed the optics on it so that it's a lot better than before, so it'll be more useful, especially in ground forces. Then they added, for these ones, the bomb separately and also the aileron loss, and added custom loadouts for the Hornet of all things, which is kind of cool going forward. So then we have the Hunter F6. The Hunter F6, the gyro sight, is they added another gyro sight. I wonder what that's going to look at. Let's see. Let's just do this real quick. Then they removed a bunch of loadouts, but added some new loadouts now, which fit in with the custom loadouts, so now you can kind of mix and match, which is something you couldn't do before. They did the same thing with the FJ Mark 9, so they're really trying to get to a point where whoever's working on like the custom loadout stuff, they're working tirelessly to try and get them all done. Like it is completely nuts how many custom loadouts have been added, right? Even the IL-2s now, the IL-2s have their custom loadouts, so now you'll be able to mix and match with all of those as well, which is pretty cool. So yeah, not too bad for those. Even the German IL-2 got them as well, so simple as. The IL-4, the nose gunner, lost a bunch of ammo. Not a huge issue, but kind of annoying. IL-28, once again, has those engine changes. I wonder how they're picking. Let's see. If we if they added the gyro sight for the J7, like what means that they get a gyro sight and what means they get the engine changes, you know? That's like, that's the thing that I'm kind of interested in. Like what makes them like change, what makes them get the engine change, what makes them get the other one. The Ju-52 got a new model, which is nice. Since once again, it's an AI vehicle that isn't really used for anything. But that's cool. And, you know, we kind of have a Ju-52 in the game, I think, for Sweden. It might not have been added yet, actually. It may just be stuck around the place. They changed the Lancasters when it came to loadouts. So, 250-pound bombs drop separately now. And then, obviously, a bunch of reward changes, meaning that you get less for the amount that you dropped, apart from the 1,000-pounders, which is the main one you use anyway for bombing bases. So it turns out it doesn't really matter too much. It's just going to be harder to be able to grind through those. They also added the gyro sight for the MiG-15 and then all of that stuff as well. So MiG-19s get custom loadouts, so you can bring one missile if you want to. Then CCIP for cannons for the MiG-21P FM. Not really going to make too much of a difference for that vehicle. And then also some new loadouts to the MiG-27s. So you get, once again, the drag bombs. MiG-29s, same deal. Drag bombs, and then also these 3 changes, which are happening with pretty much all vehicles. And then the Mystère gets the custom loadouts too, along with the other Mystère as well. So pretty much all of the... It's like the same changes for pretty much everything, but you can see how much effort is going into getting all of this stuff done, and we're not even past aviation yet. And not even past like half of the aviation stuff. Like it's crazy when you think about it. The custom loadouts for a bunch of these vehicles, new loadouts for the Q5L, so it gets some 250 drags, which are good, and then also the SAR gets custom loadouts as well, so you can bring along a few more things, which is quite nice. Part 4, we're down the same route. So the SB2C5 for France gets a 2,000-pound bomb, which is nice, but just use the 50 cals. The SB23 also gets 2 stock loadouts, which are nice to make it a bit easier. Scimitar gets custom loadouts. The SU6 also gets some new loadouts for it, so you can change the guns. You can actually change the gun stock now, so you don't have to unlock anything. And then also the SU7BKL has a custom loadout set, which is nice, plus 128 rockets of the S5K variety. The SU7s also get custom loadouts, so you can bring along a bunch of different stuff now, which is good. Hopefully, at some point, those things can be a little bit more useful than they are right now. SU-17, they're swapping up the loadouts again on all of them. One day they'll get countermeasures, hopefully. The SU-22s, they're doing the same thing. And now the SU-25. So they're once again modifying the damage stuff on the SU-25. So after being told through like a dev blog and also changes that the thing is going to be less tanky, now they're making it even less tanky again. So let's see if it will finally, after all this time, be less tanky. Who knows? I doubt it though. So it's got less HP on the engine, and also the damage multiplier on the engine is way higher than it was before. So it should burn up pretty quickly. They also added some new loadouts, the drag bombs, and then also the same changes to the SU-25K, since it's exactly the same vehicle, basically. So, with just some slight countermeasure changes. The Super Mystère gets custom loadouts, and also the TBD-1, the good old Devastator, along with the TBF Avenger. The Avenger, actually, the TBD gets some pretty cool stuff. So you can see here it gets 3 500s and 1 1000. Pretty cool. You know, going to be useful for Naval. TBF-1C in the Avenger, which is the premium one for America, it now has the later belts, I think, on the 50 cals, and also a 2,000-pound bomb and 1,600-pound bomb. So that'll be once again pretty useful in naval. The Tornado's got the drag bombs, and also the F Mark III got given a different radar, but it works exactly the same way. And then also they did a lot of custom loadout changes to the Tornado. As I said, whoever's like doing all of these changes, Jesus, like imagine going through it all like this. Then you got a gyro sight for the IDS, new loadouts as well, the drag bombs and all of that good stuff. Same for the other IDS. And the TU-14T, they've actually improved its stock setup, so it'll be easier to grind, but also take you longer. Classic. Yak 141, they added the drag bombs to it, which you'll never use. And then also the Year 2s, the bombs now drop separately, so it'll be easier to be able to, set it all up. They also changed the A109 EOA because they gave it custom loadouts, so they're even doing that for helicopters as well, which is kind of nice. They're just doing it across the board for pretty much everybody. You can see a few changes to helis, like the new cockpits for the Cobras, which is good. And also the rocket containers can no longer be jettisoned, so you can't lose that general weight. And then they also changed the 6M. A lot of the DM changes that they made to the engines for airplanes, they're also bringing in for helicopters, which is kind of interesting to see. But stuff like the Bo 105 also gets a new cockpit and custom loadouts, which will make quite a large difference to the vehicle, at least in my opinion. H-34 gets a better stock loadout, since it gets HVARs and also AS-11s, which is, at least quite nice. It means that you don't have to do rocket stocks. And then also the IR-316B, the vehicle that was removed, it now has 6 Malyutkas, which is also stock if you have that vehicle. But I feel like most people don't have that vehicle. The Mi-4 also got custom loadouts. They're adding a lot of custom loadouts for a lot of the lower tier helicopters, so instead of just the higher tier ones, which will help them out quite a lot, which is why they're removing a lot of loadouts and adding the loadouts. Basically, it's just so you can create your own loadouts, so you don't have to be too crazy about that stuff. So there is also the new helicopter paratrooper for ejection seats, so that's for the K-50 and 52 that we talked about. And they also removed an exoskeleton radar, which was to do with the April Fool's event, which turned up. There's also a bunch of new sensors, but it tells you what they're for. A lot of them are copy-paste, and then they'll be changed in the future, which is generally how this stuff goes. And also, you got the Mercury tracker, which is the big one, which people are more interested in. So then sensor changes. You got IR and TV trackers for targeting pods. They've massively buffed the RCS, and also the way that air radars work, they've actually buffed and nerfed a bunch of them too. So the ANAWG9, you can see here that the wide search period is much higher, same with the medium search and the narrow search, and the TWS. So basically, if I'm reading this correctly, now someone can correct me, I'm pretty sure that means that it takes longer for the radar to actually scan. So it's a little bit slower compared to what it was before, which obviously is more negative for the radar. Then we have the RN01 Arbalest, so they changed that too. Ground radars, they've also changed the track on the RCS, the 9K330 for the Panzer is better, and obviously the track is a lot better, goddamn. That's kind of nuts. They've massively changed a lot of these, which is kind of crazy. And then also auto trackers, they've changed too. For the LVKV, you actually have a higher range, but what's the point? Because you can't shoot. You can't shoot as far, so it doesn't matter. Playable hangar technician. Oh my god, they're actually fully putting him in. So this might actually be something that we see kind of going forward. So they added new parameters for the hangar technician, which was the guy from the Christmas thing where you clicked on him and then he like moved around. So his max speed is 10 kilometers, max reverse speed is 5, his angular speed is 30 kilometers. Jesus. Acceleration, goddamn. Normal ground smooth viscosity. So there you go. There's also new bunkers for the new naval mechanic, which, we talked about previously. So yeah, pretty cool. So yeah, quite nice. I'm hoping that that they do fully add him in. So they added a bunch of new ships. Once again, we went over them all, so not a huge issue or not a huge change. Then they've changed the Arizona, basically making it more tanky, which is always fun. So with a lot of the battleships, what they've been doing is they've been taking belts of armor and splitting them into smaller parts. They started to do this a few updates ago to either make it more realistic or to make it either easier to model or whatever the reason they're doing it. So what's ending up happening is they're kind of, instead of dealing with just like one big layer, they're now chopping it into like little layers which are side by side, which is why it says here for the Arizona they've added 16 281mm belt armors. So that doesn't mean that they're like layering them on top of each other. It means that they are horizontally putting them side by side to create the belt, but in a line. So that's going to replace like the one belt that they have, so therefore it's easier to change armor values if needed, kind of like what they did with volumetric for the armor, right? Like basically just making it so the actual parts of the armor are a lot smaller, so you can have more of them in a different setup, right? The torpedo bulge for the Arizona can be overpressured, which is hilarious. So we'll have to see what goes on for there. The Enterprise, it's chunkier now, already pretty chunky. And then also the Nevada, the Comuna, the Fuso, the Haruna, and the Congo, they've changed the anti-torpedo bolts too. So they're definitely doing something with it. We'll have to see how that's affected by torpedoes, but also just general guns. I'm sure it won't be a huge thing, but they're changing basically every machine which has the torpedo bulges and doing the same thing. So, interesting. The Bayern's lost 4 engine rooms, which I think makes it more realistic. I don't know if they changed its actual speed, but they have done that. And then also the main turret elevator lower armor is only 80mm now, which kind of sucks. Less armor is never fun. The Leipzig, Nuremberg, and Belfast all got the same anti-torpedo bulge changes, and the fail is now a kilometer an hour slower. So watch out. Kind of absolutely crazy. Then we also have the Kronstadt, the hood. So they're changing themselves with the torpedo bulge, and then also the 183s. They added the exhaust cover as a DM, so you get 4mm of extra structural steel. So quite nice, simple as that. The BM-21 launcher faces forward by default, which actually, it won't change that much how you do it. It might just make certain movements a little bit shorter, which is fine. The 204 got some more armor, but the big one is the 12412P. So this is the premium ship, which basically what they added to this one. They added the Strela to it. Now, the Strela doesn't actually work. It doesn't actually, like, you can target it and you can, like, put it with, like, the mouse or whatever, but what you can't do is you can't lock onto targets and you can't fire it. So they're obviously going to do it eventually. Like, they're going to set it up and they're going to sort it. But right now, it's just not going to happen, Like, it's not going to be set up. They did move the 30mm to the AA though, so I think the idea is eventually to get this to work or to do it automatically, but on the dev server, it wasn't working. Simple as that. So for the Ryanair, they changed the horizontal limits on the turrets. Same with the Chebakov, with some of it, so to make it a little bit more sorted. And And then also the Diana actually got a pretty decent buff. The Diana is already really good, by the way. Like, I don't know why people don't play it as much, but it got a search radar and also a track radar, which is super cool. The Dido also, unfortunately, got its DMs changed along with everything else. We've talked about this in the past with Naval. They just really like doing a ton of changes to these things. Over and over and over again, which is kind of annoying. The Southampton has some more armor on the transmission, so hopefully that helps it out. And then also the T-51s, they now have wood instead of structural steel. Now, this might be surprising, but this actually is quite a large buff because it means that a lot of stuff won't be able to penetrate off the bat, where previously it was able to, which is quite funny. The Shikaku's center of gravity has changed, so pretty cool there. And then also the Andrea Doria, you can't get the torpedo stock anymore, which is just a bit rude in my opinion. They've also changed the belt armors on it, so if you are interested in that vehicle, you're going to have to, have a look and see how its setup is. The Alighieri, they removed 5 engine rooms on it, which is kind of nuts, and the Freccia now has a new loadout on it, which seems odd. So 2 40s and then also 2 SIs. I can't see them doing like custom loadouts with naval vehicles. I don't know why they've done that one. So the Eagle has lost its 3-3 spawns, and also they changed the sailor models from UK to French, which is quite fun. So that's quite good. Now they're actually going to look French. Same with the Douai Trion. So all that stuff sorted. They're removing the 3-3 spawns because they're actually adding in the tech tree in the next update. Remember, the French CBT is going to be, well, a CBT. So you'll be able to either buy into it or you'll be able to grind it, or as long as it stays, the same as usual. They also added a HETF to the Douai Trion for the 75s, but as anybody will tell you, the 75s aren't exactly great. So yeah, they've changed a lot of slight little things about these, but we covered them on the dev server in the video, so not a huge deal. Once again, new tanks. They also removed the exoskeletons. The April Fool's stuff is gone. It's disappeared and reduced to ashes. The M1KVT and all of the vehicles we've already covered. We didn't miss anything. The T90S Bishma was removed at some point. So in one of the updates, all the rest have stayed though. So just to kind of let you know. Oh, wait. So the VT4 is something which also I don't think came about. So this is like an exported ZTZ99 that everybody's kind of forgotten about. The only thing I found in the files for it was actually some tracks. So kind of T90M situation, where the T90M's tracks are actually in the files. They have been for a long time, but obviously no T90M. Then the Levad got the Shell Jackson animation, which is super cool. And also a bunch of high-tier vehicles. The ESS now appears from other exhausts as well, so not just from one of them. So that's pretty cool. And the M5 has a slight bit more armor, but not anything crazy. The M19 got heavier, so it's going to be a little bit more chunky to move around. And also the M47, the first stage got reduced, which kind of sucks. Because that vehicle didn't have a huge first stage anyway. The M901, the Baglet, the Weasel, CM25, the TOW, the VCC Eddie Dado, and the Hit Fist, and the PVRB, the maximum number of simultaneously guided missiles is now limited to 1. So this is actually a huge change. Basically, you aren't able to guide more than 1 missile at the same time. So this is a change which they talked about in one of the dev blogs, which we covered, where basically the moment you fire another missile, the other one will just go nuts. Now, this used to happen with some vehicles in the game, but not happen to other ones. Now it's going to pretty much happen to all of them. Same with the M3C FV that you can see here. So they changed the XM803 as well. They brought it in line with the MBT-70s and the KPZs. And for the Florak Panzer, the breaches have been separated along with the Florak Rad, whereas transmission can no longer be overpressured, which will give it a lot more survivability, which is good. It's kind of annoying with those high tier AAs. I feel like a lot of the time, if you don't see an enemy early enough, you're basically just trading with the enemy and how it all sets up. The Churchill 3s for Germany and Britain, and also the 3-inch, they basically got a little bit more armor. Won't really make that much of a difference. It'll basically be the same. The Leopard 1A5 and also the Leopard C2 Mexus, they added the Gunner's Optic to the DM as some good old setup, which is nice. And then also the Leopard 2A4 and Panzerbits 123 and AMAP, the 2K and the 121, they added the Commander's Optic cover to the DM as 20mm modern RHA. I'm kind of looking forward to when they actually decide to make the optics one of those things that matter, you know, like in when I mean like when they get damaged. Like they've just done it with radiators now, so there's no reason why they won't do it with optics, which will be pretty useful. M47 we already talked about before, so not huge issues, just little nerfs, which kind of sucks. And then the Tiger 1 early, they added a turret ring to the DM as 85mm RHA, which if you haven't noticed, the early Tiger, the good old H1, didn't have a turret ring. So you could just fire shots through it, which is something 75mm American tanks would do all the time. So, yeah, that's obviously going to help it out quite a lot, which would be nice. The TAM, they've added Commander's Optic cover once again, and also the VT-12 has a Commander sight, which is pretty cool. Same with the 2S25, they changed the carousel, but it's not really going to matter. Same with the 2S25M. And then the BM-13N, the ammo can now be damaged, so artillery is calling. The BMD and BMP3, they added an overheat reload time, which is 15 seconds. Previously, it just wouldn't overheat in that way. And the BMP-1P, the guided missiles is limited to 1. You're going to see this a lot for many ATGM carriers. So, you know, just understand that's how it's going to go, right? Same with the BMP-2, and also I believe the BMP-2M as well, which is around the place. Then the decorations can also now be placed on first plate of side skirts, last plate of right skirts, and the spotlights, which is just kind of crazy. And they've changed the IS-2s. So now the upper front plate and lower is CHA and also now volumetric. So good luck to anybody trying to kill those things now. You're going to get some really wonky setups. The turret armor is also volumetric on them, so basically they're fully volumetric now, just as vehicles. Same with the IS-2 1944, it's all fully volumetric, where previously it wasn't. And then they did the same change to the IT-1 as all the other ATGM launchers, which, you know, is huge for the vehicles, and same with this. The 268 has a higher first stage, which, I mean, sure, but good luck getting out 17 rounds anyway. So I suppose that's positive, but like it's not going to make a difference, right? Your reload rate and everything is too long for that change to matter. Panzer S1, 3mm to 5, and then also they've reduced the structural steel, so technically it's less tanky, but it's not going to make a difference. The Su-85M, the effective thickness no longer limited to 130mm on the front hatch, so now you'll get weird ricochets off that compared to previously. Also, they changed the tracks so on the 122, so you can actually put stuff on them. The T-34-85 also is going to variable thickness, so it's going to good old volumetric with the CHA. So they're changing a lot of USSR vehicles. They're bringing them from the old system and bringing them into the new. That's basically what they're focusing on. Same with the T-34-100 and also the engine grills for the T-54s for China and the USSR. For the Shilka, you've got 4mm of structural steel added for the good old bulges, so it's not really going to make a difference. And also the Bosvac and the ZSD-63, the fighting compartment is now considered open when it comes to sounds, which makes sense because it is open, so that's kind of cool. You got the Cent Mark 1, the gearbox has been changed, so it's slightly faster than it was before, but nothing too crazy. Then also the Challenger 2 with the Dorchester, so the Challenger 2E, they've given 30mm structural steel to the supports for the damage model for the lower front plate. They removed the rubber cylinder at the base of the cannon, and also once again the SS change. The Challenger 2F, the first plate in the mudguard is no longer hidden. Don't even know why it was in the first place. And also the Charioteer, they added a little box for 4mm. The gun mask also of the Mark III is now 30mm. You'll still be able to punch through it, which is basically what people do anyway now. And also the Mark VII is getting a little bit more tanky on the side. I hope that means that those holes which are on the side of the Churchill Mark VII, basically equidistance between the middle of the tank and the front of the tank. I hope that they're actually, fired. I hope they have like that there, because otherwise that's like a huge weak spot for the vehicle. Like you can just go straight through it. The Falcons, the decorations can now be placed on the track covers, and then also the track animation multiplier has been decreased for the Independent of all things. More decoration spots for the Matilda Hedgehog and the Sark Mark 6, the 2-pounder and the 6. You can see that they're changing a lot of the armor. They're actually increasing it by quite a lot, which is quite nice. But it's still not a huge amount. It'll stop you against certain like machine guns, but that's pretty much about it. So kind of sucks in that regard. The Polstons on the Skinks are getting a little bit of a buff, meaning that their limits are a little bit higher, which is nice. But also it's getting heavier, so you're going to be super, well, its empty mass is lower, but its overall mass is higher. No, sorry, it's lower, my bad. So it's actually going to be a bit quicker around the place, which will be quite good. The Vickers Battle Tank Mark III, the crew turret drives, cannon breech, radio station, and ammo can now be overpressured, which is cool. And then the Ho-Ri, the Ho-Ro, the Type 60, and the Type 74 are all getting little changes to their armor. Which won't make huge differences, but it's something to look out for, especially with the Type 74s, where they're massively reducing these mudguards, so you'll be able to shoot that angled shot through the road wheel, much easier to do, which is good. The Type 87, the fighting compartment is now considered open when it comes to sounds, which is weird because it's not open. And then also, they changed the gun on some of the Chinese vehicles. Which it will act exactly the same, but they just changed its name. The spall shields for the AFT-09 have been changed, so it'll be a bit more tanky. The main thing about the vehicle, though, is it will still be able to do the top-down nature, which will be nice to it. And the PG-Z04A, you have 4mm of structural steel instead of 8, and once again, stuff is being unhidden, which is good. The Hong Kong T-34 gets a big nerf. The commander can no longer control the gun. Very sad. Kind of sucks. And also the QM506. You remember that vehicle that everybody said that was going to be OP, but just wasn't? Well, now, the launcher is now always pointing 2.75 degrees above the aiming circle when within the horizontal and vertical limits. So this actually should hurt it even more because you have to line up the lock with the gunner sight, and then if you are able to do that, then the missile isn't going to directly go there, which sucks. Type 64 is a little bit lighter, which is good. It'll be a little bit more moving around. They added the ammo carousels to the DM of the WZ1001, so it's 6mm of steel. We'll have to see if that has the same effect as the USSR ones or not. And then also some engine grills for some Chinese vehicles. Massive changes to a lot of the Chinese vehicles. Wow, okay. The 69-2A, the engine and crew armor is going from 135 to 4mm. So it'll be kind of nuts. I will be back in 2 seconds. Sorry about that. 2 seconds. Slight interlude. Ooh. Just had to sort something out real quick, but it's all good now. Alright, so, where were we? We're only on part 5, by the way. There's like 20 parts to this. As I said, it's a huge update. So hopefully you're in for the long run. The QN is in the Chinese tree. So, the Ariete, they've increased the side skirts, and also the Fiat, they've reduced the ammo count, which kind of sucks. And then we have the engine horsepower for the automatic. They've actually boosted it by quite a lot, but we'll have to see how the transmission does with that extra horsepower, if it works or if it doesn't work for the vehicle. They added the MG port to the DM for the Mark 1C and the hybrid, so now that might make it more tanky or less tanky, I don't actually know. And then the VRCC Centauro, they changed a few things to it as well, so quite nice to see. Then the 2C BIS, they changed the floor, same with the 2C, so if you get a bomb under it, it'll be easier to blow up now. And also, they added the ammo storage logic, so ammo will now disappear as they're consumed, which wasn't happening before for some reason with the 2C. They just kind of forgot about it. The AMD 35, the ammo can now be damaged, so you literally couldn't damage the ammo in the thing. Like, how does that happen? And then also the commander is no longer a substitute for the loader, and also the commander is the driver now, so that's how they changed that up. The AMX-50 TOA 100 has some increases in armor and decreases in other places, and the same with the Sublinda and the Subasse and a bunch of other things. They're just changing how armor moves around the place. And then also, the launcher is now always pointing 8 degrees above the aiming circle with the Santal, so they're doing the same thing with that to the QN506, or the 502, whatever it's called. The Leopard 1A5NO and also the Swedish one get some slight changes, but nothing too crazy. Same with the Magak 6 and all of the other Magaks, they're getting slight differences as well, such as the Gimel getting less armor on the UFP and LFP, which was its main issue anyway, so now they're just making it worse. They added the smoke grenades to the DM though, so at least there's that, I suppose. Macavers are being changed with their smoke effects as well, won't make a huge difference. Same with all the Macavers, and the Delette, it's actually getting different optics, so its optics are better than they were before, so there's more zoom, which is quite nice, but of course with more zoom comes lower FOV. This is happening not just with the Delette, it's also happening with the Gimel, so the Gimel has better optics on the zoom, but worse FOV overall. And they're doing the CSS change to everything, where they changed the exhausts. They also added some new aircraft guns, so the 7.62mm ANM 235s, same with the 12.7mm ANM 2s, so these ones might be the new ones that the American vehicles are using. Then you've got also the PV1 for the 7.62mm. This is getting changed. This is actually the very early USSR gun, which turns up for a lot of the vehicles. It's on some of the earlier biplanes. It's not a bad gun, it's just, generally not used too much. And then also, there is a few different things. A bunch of the 12.7s and a bunch of the 13s are now going to be using the real shatter system for shrapnel generation, so it looks like they're moving a lot of things on top of it, but also remember they're changing a lot of DMs to vehicles, so we'll have to see how that all sets up. The 20mm Swedish guns, they have removed the effective distance parameter on them and also added the fuse delay to 0. Same with the Heffy T. They've massively reduced its penetration, which is really good because these were straight up broken in ground forces because they were able to, shoot through things. The real shatter system is also set up. It was hilarious the other day. Somebody was telling me to use, only AP belts on these guns because of the fact that, it's affected by real shatter when they weren't yet. And this, once again, there's a ton of misinformation around all these things about what has it, what doesn't. Literally, you can just check it in the files, but, that I suppose that's quite hard work at the end of the day. The 25mm Aidens, they've reduced the mass on them. And also, they've changed the shrapnel preset on them. which I suppose is good because the APCR shrapnel preset is terrible on the 25mm, so the AP will be a lot better. But unfortunately, they lost a lot of penetration, which is a bit of an issue. They reduced the mass of the 30mm Aidens 2 and also the 30mm GAU. They basically did the same change to it, like the 25mm. So you have less penetration, but at the same time, you'd have to deal with APCR. They added a bunch of new bombs. All these are drag bombs, pretty much, apart from, I believe, some incendiary ones somewhere. But we covered that in the other videos for the dev server, so not a huge deal. And then also the 3,000-pound M118, they added like 40 kilos of explosive mass to it, which is really nice. And then also they changed the track rate of the laser seekers of all of the guided bombs, which pretty much means that they are not going to lose track if they're a laser bomb. That's how all of this is. They're just not. Like, look at that. You know, they're able to track at 10,000 degrees per second instead of 10. So if you're looking for a vehicle to, you know, not be seen by that thing, it should be all good, you know. Like, your bomb's never gonna get lost. Is basically the way to put that. The 10 kilo SD-10C, its mass is now 7 kilos, which is hilarious. And the 100 kilo explosive mass on the 5100s has been upped by quite a lot. Basically 14 or 15 kilos, which is kind of nuts. They also changed the cab 500KR. They changed a bunch of things to it. The main one to look at, though, is this. The max G-load time has been massively reduced on it. And also it behaves the same in AB and RB, which is kind of surprising. Then they've changed a lot of stuff to the 500L as well, so you're going to have to see how that affects things. There's a bunch of targeting new pods. You got the Lantern, the Copio, the Mercury, the Damocles, and also the AGM-12B. These are all on the new machines, and also some new missiles in the form of the AIM-54C and the PL-11. The PL-11, which is the Aspide, I believe, was supposed to go on the J8F, but it isn't going on it anymore. They removed it and just made it so it actually has 6 PL8s that it can bring along, which are the Python 3s from the Israelis. They also changed a bunch of rockets, so changing, you can see here the bullet type from HeatFS to ATGM for some reason, and also slight differences to rockets as well, reducing their overall explosive mass, which is actually going to hurt them quite a lot. They're also changing these guys massively. There's a lot of like just huge like changes that they're making to a lot of these missiles, which I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure how effective or how crazy like the changes are going to be. But yeah, you can see here like the explosive mass is massively increasing, the damage penetration is massively increasing, you know, the hit power multiplier is massively increasing. So they're just making a lot of explosives way more powerful than they were before. Same with the AGM-114F. You can see here they're doing the same thing with the good old ATGMs, just massively increasing how the damage output they have, and also a lot of the sensitivities they're massively increasing as well. So yeah, they're getting kind of nuts, the good old Hellfires, and also a lot of other things as well. You can see here with the ITO and the RB, with like stuff like this, once again, they're just getting very different on how they're all set up. So just like how, you know, in the dev blog, they've changed how they're going to be moving through the air. They've also changed a bunch of other stuff with how much they actually hit and how much damage they do. Like you can see here on the Hot 1, like the hit power actually increases over distance now, which is kind of interesting to think with the cumulative damage. If you put it in, it's kind of nuts. So yeah, they're changing a lot of missiles for helicopters and how they're going to work. So that is something to keep an eye on if you're a helicopter pilot overall. Most of them are getting the same changes though. And as I said, this is just going to need a lot of testing to work out how this is actually going to affect a lot of different matchups, and then who's going to come out on top because of how different things are played. So definitely interesting to see. from a helicopter point of view. They're also changing a lot of just general missiles and how they work as well, which is kind of annoying because, you know, the issue I have with so much of this top tier stuff is the simple fact that you have all of these, like, you have all of these things. Like, you have all of these general missiles and all of this stuff, and you can talk about them one update, and then in the next update, they are completely different. So, like, look at the KH-29T. Look at all of the stats. These are basically all the stats that control this thing, right? And they're all changing. So everything you've seen from the KH-29, right? Everything you've seen before next update, it's done. The machines, the missile's completely different now. So you throw everything else out, and then now we got the new stuff. So whenever you like make a video talking about it, or you know how it works or what it does, doesn't matter. It's completely different now. And that's like with just, you know, a click of a switch. The Makopa's being changed too. Same with the BA-7, the HJA. All of these missiles are being massively changed. So if you are specifically interested in one of them, it is worth having a look at. The main thing to focus on is the cumulative damage, though, since that is something that's, you know, going to affect them quite aggressively. They've also even changed chaff and chaff large. So the mass has been reduced by a lot, same with the mass after booster burn, but the drag coefficient and precision have increased, with the radar visibility massively increasing as well. So yeah, it's just all over the place, like when it comes to it. They removed all of the exoskeleton stuff, which, you know, is not a surprise. They also added in some new weapons, nothing too crazy. All of the things are attached to vehicles we've had a look at previously. No new ones in that way. And then obviously they're massively changing a lot of ammunition values as well, making some parts of the Damar formula, some parts of real shatter, and also some just completely changing how they work, you know, which is just how it is. Like, for example, the 76mm Otto Melara 7662, the SAP-HE, you can see here they're changing the drag coefficient and also the maximum distance. Same with the HE-MOM, HE-VTF. Same with the AT-GEM. Like, it's just understand, they are fundamentally changing how every single missile works, how a lot of different guns work, how a lot of different penetration is well, not necessarily calculated, but changing to the new system. You have real shadow coming in as well. You have DM changes on top of all this. They're changing everything, right? Everything when it comes to how damage is dealt and also how damage is taken. So when people say stuff like, why is this update taking so long, or why is this taking such a long time, you can see it all here in the Datamines. They are literally wiping the slate clean with a lot of stuff and just fundamentally changing a lot of stuff. It's nuts how much like work is going into doing this, right? Which is why all of the things you've seen before this update, like a lot of the complaints about DMs, a lot of the complaints about like penetrations, a lot of complaints about post-pen, they're all going to have to be redone. All going to have to be redone because they are changing everything. Literally changing everything. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts how much this stuff is changing, right? All of this is still just missile changes. Right? All of them. Right? This is the 155s for the AUF-1, right? So this is where the missile changes end. We've had 3 parts of missile changes. Plus, you know, penetration statistics and also post-penetration statistics for guns. It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. Like, all of the different, like, little intricate changes that they're doing. And we're back to AT-GEMs again. All of it. All of this is just AT-GEMs. Right? Look at it. It's nuts. Some of it is not 80 gems. Some of it is SAMs, but it's because of the dev blog, right? So I'm not gonna go over any of this because we've already gone over anything here. So it's as simple as that. Naval weapons. They've added a bunch of new ones, which makes sense. These are all the French ones. This is the USSR missile that they're adding in, and then also the Strela 3, which we talked about previously. Then they're changing a lot of the penetration statistics and coefficients on the rounds for a lot of these vehicles as well. They added some new depth charges. They added some new mines, once again, all for France, since it's the new tech tree. Makes the most sense. They're also changing some of the torpedoes. One of the worrying things about them is this. So instead of having shrapnel damage with torpedoes, instead what torpedoes do now is they actually overpressure targets, or have the ability to overpressure targets. So now torpedoes, if done correctly, are going to be way more effective than they were before, because what was happening before is because of the changes, stuff like cruiser and destroyer DMs and all of that stuff over the period of time, you would hit a lot of targets, but because it was shattering into the targets, sometimes you would just hit open spaces or engines and it wouldn't do a lot of damage. Whereas now, with it being overpressure, there is going to be a lot of times where torpedoes are just going to one-tap you, depending on where they hit and what they blow apart, right? So that basically means that you're going to have to be super careful of torpedoes compared to previously. And this is happening with all torpedoes once again, even the newer French ones. So yeah, they once again, as I said, they're fundamentally changing like how every single system works in the game when it comes to dealing damage and taking damage, which is why it's very important to go through this stuff and understand what's going on here, right? Because all of the conversations that we've had previously before this update about how damage is dealt, how everything is done, are just thrown out the window. Which is why it's very hard to keep track of what's going on when it comes to War Thunder nowadays, because everything just like completely changes. They also added some functionalities. So French Naval unlocked to obviously different people. French Naval available, and then also you have esports, event manager, guide, and devs. So these are the different like things that they can give to people in order to, give them access to certain things in the game. Same with like the profile icon stuff as well. So all that's just pretty bog standard. Basically, they're just adding these levels instead of what they used to do, which is just give them the wrong levels and then just kind of go from there. They changed the number of stuff to unlock each rank, which is not a surprise because, once again, they've changed a lot of the different amounts, which is around the place. So yeah, we'll see what kind of goes on with there. They changed the HUD, but not really. What they've pretty much done is just change the color of things so they stand out a little bit more and bolded certain things. And they also added an explosion test to the protection analysis, which is actually really cool. Like at the end of the day, like that one is pretty awesome. And also the pre-trained US aircraft for new players changed. The reason why it did change was because of the BF2C1, which is now the new reserve for it. So if you want, you should get these things researched as quick as, well, not researched, but fully modified. So it's easier to modify now compared to previously. They've removed a bunch of vehicles. AA Gunner US. I've no. Oh, sorry. These are the April Fool's things. So the little boys. So the mechs, or not the mechs. Sorry, the exosuits. So they removed all the exosuits. And then they obviously added in all the new vehicles, which we've talked about previously. So you can see like their repair costs and also stuff like that. Remember, all these things, all of these things are sorted out. All of these things are good and ready to go. But understand that they do change quite a lot. Then also you have some tech tree changes, which are always around the place. And I'll just do this quickly. There you go. If you want to post it. So This is just like what you see and what you don't see in different places, which is around the place. So it is kind of how it is. So we can have a look at that setup and then kind of go from there. So all of these are around the place. Then you have some X-ray changes as well, which are pushing around. So not huge changes. The H-75 actually has a different engine now, which means that it's a little bit heavier, which is kind of cool. And then also they changed the engine model of the H6, so it's a little bit quicker, but it's also heavier, so it will handle a little bit differently, which is kind of cool. The M41D, they've changed the test targets, which makes sense. And also Nepal is now Australian and not British, which makes sense. And now they added a bunch of new loadout icons. So these are the custom loadout ones that we've talked about. So, you know, they've added a ton of these for different bombs. So if you want to have a look at any, you can. Same with the tech tree images for the vehicles, which, you know, makes the most sense. They've added a ton of images. So French Navy unlocked menu image. So this is the one that you get, because obviously it's the two vehicles. And then the PC store promo they also added. So they might be adding a new promo in the setup too. They added a bunch of new Steam achievement images. One thing I'll say is they did set up a lot of new achievements, which I'm just wondering when they're going to bring them in, is probably the best way of putting it. So they've redone all of the Steam achievement images, and my guess is they'll do a bunch of that stuff going forward too. Also some stat card images as well, which have been redone, so you can have a look at those, which are around the place, not just new vehicles, but also some old ones as well. You can see the stat card images changes here, so you got the PE8 going to this one. I don't know why. I mean, I think one of the things they're doing with a lot of the stat card images is they're trying to make it so that it's a little bit clearer which one it is. Like, this one is not the finished one. This is just nicked from the other PT-76. So you can see that they're redoing a lot of these ones. Like, even like the K50, right? So once again, just showing more of the vehicle off instead of less of the vehicle in it. So whoever's doing that, obviously not taking or doing a little bit. They also added amendments to the terms and conditions. So it might be worth reading that. You know, I'm always banging on about this. It's a very good idea to read the terms and the conditions, and also the ULA of these, of Gaijin stuff, and also War Thunder stuff. So you know what's, you know, going on, and all of that good stuff. So then added a lot of the and a to some text line, like select primary or select primary weapons. Bunch of random text changes. They don't really make any difference at all. Same with menu text, mainly talking about the French fleet stuff, and also just making it a little bit more useful for what you're generally doing. You can hide player nicknames. This is something they've already added in. Same with display user ID and change player nicknames. They've added some new mission text, because this is obviously the new missions that are coming in. Teams should destroy indicated targets, capture airfields and air zones, and fulfill other tasks in order to win. Wait for a takeoff command. Interesting. Maybe they're adding some more simulator stuff, so we'll see what goes on. New UI text. Your account has been frozen. To unfreeze your account, please contact technical support. This one's already in. Same with all of these stuff as well, so kind of cool to see at the end of the day. And also they've changed a lot of names of different vehicles just to basically set them up. They have actually added some different country signs which are moving around as well. Modification text, they're just making them more standard, which is good. And then also Steam Trophy text as well for the vehicles, for the actual achievements themselves, has been clarified. And the main thing, as I said, is they added a bunch of like locked Steam achievements, if you want to put it like that. There was actually, I think right now there's like 30 or 40, and it was going to like 100 or 120. So the basic thing that they're going to do is they're going to probably expand that. They've also changed some avatar text changes as well for the page of history stuff, probably changing some little text or making it a little bit more sanitary because you don't want to annoy anybody. The tactical helmet is being changed to the tactical helmet. And then, of course, the Stars and Stripes, Sweetie Dakimura. Jesus, yeah. We are now in the interesting zone. They removed the exoskeleton editions of these maps. What they should actually do is just put them in rotation. I think that would actually be a better idea instead of the way that they've done it, where they just straight up remove them. And then also you got the new maps and their missions, the Iberian Castle stuff, Franz Josef, and also the new Air Missions 2 that have been brought in. So they're changing once again EC and how it all works and set up, which is, you know, how it is. Same with some operations and what the AIs actually have access to them and what they can use. They've also added BR-based carriers, which is pretty cool to Port Moresby, just like they have to a lot of other things. Didn't realize Moresby you could actually get at the higher tiers, but at least, you know, it actually exists. Historical campaign, so low-quality cargo ships, change the high-quality ones, and I hope this means that they won't be harder to kill. But usually this does, but they're basically just making them look really nice since they finally added in the vehicles. Why not switch them up? And also single missions, they've changed to make certain vehicles either less or more effective. I hope they actually add more single missions. I really enjoy single missions. They're a part of the game which isn't really ever focused on, but it would be kind of cool that they were. They also added some stuff to Inaccessible City. There's a few single missions that I feel like are also broken. They don't work properly, so it would be nice to see them kind of fixed. The ground missions, the Salt Kursk, they changed the IL-2Ms for that, and also the IL-2s for other stuff. And for the CDKs, the AH-1E's default skin is Israeli, which, you know, isn't too much of a surprise. The J8F cockpit textures are labeled the F8. They also added some bombs, which we had a look at recently, and also the missile now uses its own model, which is pretty cool. The naval weapons, they also added the Strela 2M for Germany, the Faster 4M launcher for the Strela 2M, 75mm MLE 1908, 35 and 30, so those were part of machines which were shown later on. They also added in a new depth charge and a new torpedo from 1918. So pretty cool and an interesting setup for things. And that was the first dev server. That was the first one. That was the first one, okay? 1 hour and 20 for the first dev server. There's so much more. Just to let you know. Why haven't I done the Datamine videos yet? This is why. We're only halfway through.